In August of 2003, 35-year-old Dr. Hitoshi Nakaido was a surgical resident with a bright future ahead of him. Known for his gentle spirit and a commitment to patient care, Hitoshi had come to be admired by both his colleagues and patients at Christus St. Joseph Hospital in Houston, Texas. But on one fateful day, an unimaginable accident would turn a routine moment into a tragic loss, leaving those around him shocked and devastated. Dr. Hitoshi Nakaido was a man driven by compassion and a relentless commitment to the field of medicine. Born and raised in Japan, Hitoshi developed a deep respect for hard work and humility, values that would guide him throughout his life. He graduated from medical school in Japan and later moved to the United States, where he began his residency with dreams of becoming a skilled surgeon. Known for his dedication and gentle nature, Hitoshi quickly earned the admiration of his colleagues, who saw in him not only a talented physician, but a genuinely caring individual. Working at Christus St. Joseph Hospital in Houston, Hitoshi spent countless hours in the operating room, perfecting his skills and learning from the experienced surgeons around him. His patients often spoke of his kindness and his calming presence, and his peers noted his humility, hard work, and a dedication to his craft. His life was centered on his purpose of making a difference, and his future looked as promising as ever. On the morning of August 16, 2003, Hitoshi was working a shift at the hospital, where the day had begun like any other. This hospital, located in downtown Houston, relied on a busy network of elevators to transport staff and patients across its various floors. These elevators were in constant use and had been known to have minor malfunctions in the past. Despite these issues, few could have predicted what would unfold that morning. At around 9:30 a.m., Hitoshi approached one of the elevators, intending to go to another floor. As he stepped into the elevator, he was caught off guard by a sudden and unexpected malfunction. The elevator doors began to close prematurely, trapping his head between them. But before he could do anything to extricate himself from the situation, the elevator began to rise. Hitoshi's head remained trapped in the elevator doors as his body was lifted, suspended, and unable to break free. The elevator continued its ascent, dragging his body upward while his head remained locked in place by the malfunctioning doors. The force and pressure from the elevator's movement made the situation all the more horrific, leaving Hitoshi in a position that no one could have anticipated. A nurse who had been nearby and had planned to join him on the elevator witnessed the terrifying string of events. As she watched in shock and disbelief, the elevator continued moving up, leaving Hitoshi helplessly trapped. The accident was over in seconds, but the devastating impact would linger far longer. The nurse immediately sounded the alarm, and within moments, hospital staff and emergency responders rushed to the scene. But tragically, it was too late to save him. The hospital staff who arrived on the scene were left shaken and understandably traumatized by the tragedy that had just unfolded. For those who had worked alongside Hitoshi, the reality of his death was surreal and painful. They had watched him work tirelessly, a dedicated resident who had come to be respected by all who knew him. To lose him so suddenly and in such a tragic way was devastating. News of the accident spread quickly, and those closest to Hitoshi, including his family, were left grappling with the loss. The nature of his passing made the tragedy even harder to accept. Losing a loved one is never easy, but the shock of such a horrific accident in a place dedicated to healing and safety was incomprehensible. In the days that followed, Christus St. Joseph Hospital faced serious questions about the safety of its elevators and whether maintenance protocols had been followed. The incident prompted an immediate investigation as people tried to understand how such a catastrophic malfunction could have taken place in the heart of a medical facility. Following the accident, the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation launched a formal investigation to determine just what had happened with the elevator. According to investigators, the sequence of events that led to Hitoshi's death were the result of a critical failure in the sensor system within the doors. Sensors that should have detected an obstruction and stopped the doors from closing. Further reviews of maintenance records revealed a history of minor issues with the same elevator, including occasional malfunctions with door closures, which only serves to make this case even more eerie. While there was no direct evidence that these prior issues had gone unaddressed, the investigation highlighted the importance of regular and thorough maintenance. In response to the findings, Christus St. Joseph Hospital implemented stricter elevator inspection and maintenance protocols, hoping to prevent any future tragedies. Hitoshi's death left a lasting impact on those who knew him. His family, friends, and colleagues were left to remember a man who had dedicated his life to helping others. Described as a driven young doctor, Hitoshi's presence was felt deeply within the hospital community. Colleagues remember him not only as a skilled resident, but as a compassionate and genuine soul who treated everyone with kindness and respect. In the aftermath, many who knew Hitoshi shared stories about his character and his devotion to his work. They spoke of his calm, easygoing demeanor, his tireless commitment to patient care, and his humility in an often demanding field. He was remembered as a doctor who went above and beyond for his patients, and whose warmth touched the lives of all those he worked with. Though he was taken far too soon, Hitoshi's memory lives on among those who knew him, serving as a reminder of what it means to be a healer in the truest sense of the word. Hitoshi's tragic passing underscored the importance of safety in environments meant to protect and heal. His death highlighted the potential dangers of overlooking routine maintenance and the critical role that safety checks play in preventing unforeseen accidents. Though Christus St. Joseph Hospital implemented changes to address the issues uncovered by the investigation, nothing could undo the loss of a young doctor who had dedicated himself to serving others. In remembering Dr. Hitoshi Nakaido, those who knew him honor his values of kindness, humility, and commitment to medicine. His story serves as a somber reminder of life's fragility and the responsibility we all share in keeping our environment safe for those around us. Dr. Nakaido's life and work may have been cut tragically short, but his legacy endures, encouraging all who hear his story to carry forward the compassion and dedication that he embodied. April 20th, 2008, Father Adelier Antonio de Carli, a Brazilian Catholic priest, took off on an unusual journey that he hoped would inspire his community and raise funds for a local charity. Known for his adventurous spirit and deep dedication to his faith, Father de Carli had planned a daring feat, a flight across the skies with nothing but a cluster of colorful helium balloons. It was a stunt designed to capture attention, but what started as an ambitious mission soon spiraled into a fight for survival. Father Adelier Antonio de Carli was not your typical Catholic priest. Born in Brazil, he was known for his boundless energy, adventurous personality, and unorthodox methods of reaching his community. In the town of Paranagua, where he served as a parish priest, Father de Carli worked tirelessly to uplift his parish and encourage his congregation, often coming up with creative ways to raise awareness and funding for those in need. His parishioners admired him for his compassion and for his devotion to both his faith and his community. By 2008, Father de Carli was focused on his latest mission, raising funds to build a spiritual rest stop for truck drivers traveling through Brazil's treacherous highways. The project was close to his heart, and he knew he'd need to do something unique to capture public attention and gather the support that he needed. With a love for adventure, he came up with a bold plan that was as daring as it was unusual: a cluster balloon flight. A method of flying typically reserved for extreme sports enthusiasts. Father de Carli was determined to use his flight to raise awareness and funds for his cause. But while he was passionate, he was also quite inexperienced in aerial navigation. His mission would require him to ascend high into the sky, exposed to wind currents and the elements, with nothing but helium-filled balloons tethered to a chair beneath him. Despite the risks, Father de Carli felt a sense of purpose, trusting that his faith and determination would see him through this challenging journey. On April 20th, 2008, a crowd gathered in Paranagua to watch as Father de Carli prepared for takeoff. The bright cluster of helium balloons stood out vividly against the sky, and his supporters cheered as he climbed into a simple rig seat and began to rise. The spectacle itself was captivating, the crowd filled with admiration for the priest's bravery as he ascended higher into the sky, reaching altitudes that few had imagined he would dare to reach. Despite his optimism, Father DeCarli encountered complications soon after he began his journey. Equipped with a GPS device, a cell phone, and a satellite phone, he planned to navigate his flight and maintain communication with his team on the ground. However, the situation quickly became precarious. He struggled with the GPS, which he later reported was difficult to use, and as he drifted higher, strong winds began to push him farther from his planned route. Within hours, he found himself at the mercy of unpredictable weather patterns, drifting away from the mainland and over the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. For several hours, Father DeCarli remained in contact with his support team, expressing his concerns as he continued to drift further from his intended course. Although he remained calm, his team grew increasingly worried. The wind was now carrying him out to sea, and as evening approached, the temperature began to drop, adding to the risks he faced. His cluster balloon flight had become a high-stakes struggle to regain control. As night fell, Father DeCarli's situation became critical. The strong ocean winds had taken him far beyond the reach of easy rescue, and he was losing altitude over the cold waters of the Atlantic. His team urged him to descend slowly and find a way to bring himself down, but the priest was quickly running out of options. With his GPS malfunctioning and his cell phone reception fading, he placed a final call to his team, asking for their prayers and guidance. In his final communication, Father DeCarli's voice remained steady, though it was clear he understood the gravity of his situation. He prayed with his team over the phone and discussed options, but it was becoming increasingly clear that he was on his own, stranded far out over the open sea, with little chance of finding his way back. After this final call, communication with Father DeCarli was lost. His team was left in a state of shock and helplessness, realizing that the ambitious mission they had all believed in was now a fight for survival. Brazilian authorities were notified, and search and rescue efforts were launched, scouring the vast ocean for any sign of the missing priest. The hope was that he had managed to descend into the water safely and was still afloat, perhaps waiting for rescue. In the days following his disappearance, the Brazilian Navy and local search teams conducted an exhaustive search, combing the waters off the coast in the hope of locating Father DeCarli. Helicopters, boats, and even fishermen volunteered to join the search, all motivated by a sense of urgency and respect for the priest's mission. Yet, as days passed with no sign of him, the outlook grew grim. Several weeks after his disappearance, some of the balloons that had carried Father DeCarli were found floating in the ocean, confirming that he had indeed drifted far from his original path. The discovery intensified the search, but it wasn't until July, nearly 3 months after the flight, that searchers made a heartbreaking discovery. The partial remains of a body, confirmed through DNA testing to be that of Father Adelir Antonio DeCarli, were recovered off the coast of southeastern Brazil. The news devastated his community, who had held out hope for his safe return. His parishioners, family, and friends were left with questions about how things had gone so terribly wrong, and whether anything could have been done to prevent this tragedy. For them, Father DeCarli's loss was more than just the end of a charitable mission. It was a blatant sign of the dangers that come with attempting the extraordinary. Father DeCarli's tragic flight highlighted the dangers associated with cluster ballooning, a highly unpredictable and experimental mode of flight. While adventurers and extreme sports enthusiasts sometimes undertake similar flights, such journeys typically involve careful planning, specialized training, and a team of experts to monitor conditions. Unfortunately, Father DeCarli's mission was undertaken with limited resources and little experience, exposing him to risks that would prove deadly. In the wake of his death, many questioned the safety protocols, or lack thereof, that had been in place. Those closest to him wondered if the mission had been too ambitious, if perhaps commitment to the cause had led him to take unnecessary risks. Experts in aerial sports pointed out that relying solely on balloons and a chair without a backup navigation system or trained personnel nearby was a dangerous endeavor. Father DeCarli's supporters were left with a sense of loss, but also an appreciation for his dedication to the mission, however unconventional. In the aftermath of his death, Father Adelier Antonio DeCarli was remembered by his community as a courageous priest who gave everything he had to serve others. Though his flight ended in tragedy, many admired his dedication to his faith and his commitment to raising awareness for causes close to his heart. In his hometown of Paranagua, parishioners gathered to honor his memory, remembering him not for the manner of his death, but for the selfless life he led. For his supporters, Father DeCarli's journey was a symbol of devotion, a reminder that he was willing to go to great lengths to make a difference. His congregation shared stories of his kindness, his energy, and his willingness to take risks for the good of others. They spoke of a man whose legacy was one of service, and whose memory would live on in the people he inspired. Father DeCarli's story points to the fine line between courage and risk. His life and mission touched many people, and though his journey ended in tragedy, his legacy is defined by his compassion, his adventurous spirit, and his commitment to his faith. His untimely death has become a part of his story, but his memory lives on as a testament to those who seek to make a difference, even in the most unconventional of ways. The death of Father DeCarli is a story that resonates with both caution and admiration. The death of Father DeCarli is a story that resonates with both caution and admiration. It reminds us of the unpredictability of life, the sacrifices people make in service to others, and the deep impact left by those willing to push the boundaries for a cause that they believe in. Mark Fidrich, affectionately known as the Bird, was a baseball icon who captured the hearts of fans with his unfiltered joy for the game. Famous for his quirks and genuine enthusiasm, Fidrich's career with the Detroit Tigers was short-lived, yet unforgettable. But after leaving the baseball field for a quieter life on his farm, Fidrich met a tragic and unexpected fate while working on his equipment. An accident that stunned all those who remembered him as a vibrant force in sports. Mark Fidrich burst onto the Major League Baseball scene in 1976 as a 21-year-old rookie pitcher for the Detroit Tigers. His charisma and unconventional style, including talking to baseballs, smoothing out the mound with his hands, and celebrating each play, quickly earned him the nickname The Bird for his resemblance to the Sesame Street character Big Bird. Fidrich became a fan favorite almost overnight, and his enthusiasm lit up the league. That same year, Fidrich posted a remarkable 19-9 record, led the American League with a 2.34 ERA, and threw 24 complete games, an achievement that brought him Rookie of the Year honors and a second-place finish in Cy Young Award voting. He was a sensation, bringing crowds to stadiums around the country just to see him pitch. Yet despite his impressive start, injuries soon plagued him, and by 1980, his major league career was over. He retired from baseball but remained a beloved figure in sports, remembered for the joy he brought to fans and his unapologetically unique approach to the game. Fidrich returned to Northborough, Massachusetts, and settled into a life that matched his hard-working spirit. Embracing farm life, he found fulfillment in working with his hands, taking on everyday chores and equipment maintenance, even as fans still stopped by his farm from time to time in order to share their memories of watching him pitch. On April 13, 2009, Fidrich was working on his farm, performing maintenance on a dump truck he used frequently for farm chores. It was an ordinary day, and Fidrich was known for his hands-on approach, tackling repairs and upkeep around his property himself. This day, however, would take a tragic turn that no one could have anticipated. The truck he was working on had a powered takeoff shaft, which is a part of the engine that transfers mechanical power to auxiliary equipment, such as hydraulics or dump bed functions. While useful, the powered takeoff shaft is a powerful and dangerous mechanism. and accidents involving it can be severe if proper precautions aren't taken. On this day, as Fidrich lay underneath the truck inspecting its parts, his clothing somehow became entangled in the spinning PTO shaft. The machinery pulled him in almost instantly, trapping him under the vehicle in a horrific sequence. With his clothes tangled tightly around him and the machinery continuing to turn, Fidrich had no way to free himself. The power and the force of the shaft kept him pinned in place, leaving him unable to break loose. Despite his best efforts, Fidrich was left immobilized, with no one nearby to hear his calls or provide assistance. Though the accident itself happened in the blink of an eye, it's likely that it took Fidrich several painstaking minutes before ultimately succumbing to asphyxiation. Later that afternoon, a friend arrived at the farm and approached the truck, only to discover the unthinkable. Fidrich was found unresponsive, still trapped beneath the vehicle in the same position where he'd been performing his repairs. The friend immediately called emergency responders, but it was already far too late. The vibrant pitcher who had once been a baseball icon had tragically lost his life in an accident that no one could have foreseen. The shocking nature of Fidrich's death reverberated through his small community and far beyond. Known for his humility and willingness to engage with fans, Fidrich was beloved by those who remembered him as the Bird, the cheerful pitcher who brought joy to the game. Learning that he had passed in such a devastating manner struck a chord with baseball fans, former teammates, and friends who had continued to hold him in high regard. News of Fidrich's passing quickly reached the baseball community, sparking an outpouring of grief from fans and former players alike. Many remembered him not only for his incredible talent, but for the personality he brought to the sport, a refreshing authenticity that made him one of baseball's most unforgettable figures. As fans reflected on his legacy, they mourned the loss of a man who had lived life on his own terms, both on and off the field. In the days following his passing, people who had known Fidrich, even if only briefly, shared stories of his kindness and humor. He remained a unique figure who saw no need for celebrity. He was happiest working with his hands and living the quiet life on his own farm. While he may have left the major leagues long ago, his time in baseball continued to resonate, and the memories he left behind were cherished by all who had seen him play. Though his life was tragically cut short, Mark Fidrich is remembered not for his final moments, but for the spirit he brought to baseball and the life he embraced afterward. The Bird lives on in the memories of fans who watched him pitch, captivating audiences with his boundless enthusiasm and sense of fun. His legacy remains one of authenticity, humor, and a life fully lived, both on the field and from the quiet farm that he called home. For those who witnessed his magic, Fidrich will always be remembered as a young, vibrant pitcher who made baseball a little more joyful, a little more unexpected, and a lot more human. Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you happen to enjoy the stories, don't forget to leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you'd like to support the channel even further, you can find us on Patreon, where every contribution helps us bring more content like this your way. You can find the link in the description, or head on over to patreon.com/Malevolent Mischief on your own. Thanks again for all the support, and like always, I hope to catch you on the next one.